The attacks by their former pack had almost cost Gwen her life. He wasn't worried about dying himself, but he had something he needed to do first. He wanted vengeance for the death of his sister. Sylvie had been so innocent, so fragile and lovely. She'd been the light in his dark world before their father had given her in marriage to André Dubois. André was a bastard and had already gone through 2 mates who'd both died under mysterious circumstances. But because André was also the Alpha's enforcer, no one had asked too many questions. No one but Armand. He touched the side of his face. His father had almost killed him for questioning Sylvie's marriage to that monster Dubois. He'd bear the scars for life. André was dead now, not killed by his hand but by another. That left his father and their former Alpha. Before he died, there were 2 men he needed to kill, Remy and Pierre LaForge. We've all been tense. And that was no lie. They'd all been on edge since the attack. For now, their former pack thought they'd killed Gwen. When they found out otherwise, there would be hell to pay. Jacques' hand landed on Armand's shoulder, and he gently squeezed. You need to let off some steam. Find some way to release the anger consuming you. You're not sleeping. You're not eating. You're not doing yourself or the pack any good like this. The hell of it was that Armand knew Jacques was right. He stepped away from his cousin and Alpha and squared his shoulders. I'll do better. The last thing he wanted to do was let down the pack in any way. Jacques frowned. You don't need to do better, Armand. You need to take care of yourself. Talking wasn't getting them anywhere, so Armand shifted once again, embracing his wolf, giving the animal part of himself free rein. He turned and trotted into the woods. Jacques' voice reached him easily. This isn't over. It was if Armand had anything to say about it. He'd do whatever he had to in order to carry out his job and protect his pack. Nothing was more important than that. Not even his vengeance. Remy LaForge sat at the kitchen table across from his brother and Alpha. Pierre finished off the slab of apple pie he was eating and pushed his plate away. What are we going to do about your sons? Remy asked. Pierre tapped the side of his coffee mug, and his wife hurried over to fill it. When she was done, she scurried away. Remy wondered, not for the first time, what his sister-in-law would be like in the sack, but it would mean his death if he tried anything. Pierre LaForge didn't share. Elise had been a beautiful girl once, a long time ago, but years of living with her overbearing mate had turned her into a faded picture of herself. Remy shrugged. Oh well, not his concern. Maybe he should think about taking another mate. He'd been horny more than usual lately and wouldn't mind coming home to a woman in his bed every night and a meal on the table. Something to think about. He waited, knowing better than to ask his question twice. To say Pierre had a temper was like saying a hurricane was a little wind and rain. Hell, he'd killed their father more than 30 years ago simply because he'd wanted to be Alpha and wasn't willing to wait for their old man to die. The only person who'd ever stood up to Pierre and lived was his son, Jacques. And the only reason Pierre hadn't killed him outright was because Jacques had simply left one day and never come back, and he'd taken his brother, cousin, and 2 others with him. Good riddance to them all as far as Remy was concerned. My sons are strong. Pierre sat back in his chair and rubbed his hand over his jaw. Remy didn't miss the implication that his son was weak. Armand had always been weak, and Remy blamed the boy's mama and sister for mollycoddling him. Remy had tried to toughen him up, make him understand he had to fight for everything if he wanted to get ahead in life and in the pack. But the boy had never learned, and when he'd questioned Remy's decision to marry Sylvie to the pack's enforcer, André Dubois, he'd had no choice but to discipline the boy. That was one way of saying he'd almost killed his only son. And Armand wore the mark of that day on his face, marking him as weak among the pack. They were dead now, his wife, daughter, and son-in-law. All that was left of his family was his son, and Remy didn't want to claim such a weak pup. Better to put him down and start over.